Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. My name is Jamie Duhamel, and I'll be your moderator today. This is Friday, July 14th, and this is the 7th public hearing of the Independent District Commission with the purpose of hearing from community members on the draft district plan for Portland's geographic districts. So before we get started, I'm going to take a moment to go over some Zoom logistics. Next slide, please. This meeting is being recorded and the recording will be posted online. So for today's meeting, we have closed captioning, American Sign Language, and Spanish interpretation available. To access Spanish interpretation, please click on the globe icon at the bottom right of your Zoom control panel and select Spanish. To access closed captioning, click on the CC button on the bottom right side of your Zoom control panel. Commissioners, please make sure to change your chat settings to everyone. And lastly, folks who are interested in giving testimony, we have the Q&A Zoom feature available. So if you have any questions or need any Zoom tech support, when we get to that part of the agenda, please let us know through the Q&A, and I'll let you know how to sign up for that in a minute as well. So let's quickly go over the agenda for today's hearing. For our time together today, the commissioners will provide us with an educational presentation that is a really helpful overview of the commission's proposals. And then we're going to open the public testimony. And once testimony concludes, we'll wrap up with some closing remarks and reflections from the commission. If we have time after the testimony is over, we may spend the remainder of the time taking additional questions. So for folks that are interested in giving testimony, I want to kind of give you a little bit of instruction now so you can start thinking about it and signing up if you'd like. There are two ways for you to let us know if you want to testify. The first option is to raise your virtual Zoom hand and we'll note your name and put it into the queue. And the second option is to please put your name in the Q&A Zoom feature. If you are calling into the meeting via phone and you want to testify, you can raise your hand by hitting *9 on your keypad, and that will raise or lower your hand in the system, and we can get you into the queue that way. There are probably multiple people here who do not want to testify, and that's okay, because there are lots of other ways that you can make your opinions known to the commission. So I'm going to tell you a few of those. First, you can email the commission at districtcommission@portlandoregon.gov. If you'd like to give verbal testimony over the phone, you can call 311 and they'll be able to take testimony in multiple languages. There is a survey online that you can take at portland.gov/transition/districtcommission. And finally, you can send your thoughts in writing through the good old postal service, and you can mail it to the Office of Management and Finance, care of the Independent District Commission at 1120 Southwest 5th Avenue, Portland, Oregon 97204. Okay, that was all we have for an introduction, and I'm going to pass it over to Commissioners Judd and Van Sickle Robbins for the educational presentation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our, I think I've lost count. I think this is our 6th community, 7th, thank you. I don't want to cut short. Our 7th community engagement session. My name is Commissioner Judd. Welcome to this public hearing on voting plans. Before we hear from you in the public commentary section, we're going to walk you through kind of an education presentation to bring you up to date on where the commission is currently. So there are currently in the current city government, there are 5 city councils elected by voters across the entire city. But in November 2022, voters adopted revisions to the city's charters requiring 4 voting districts. Starting with the 2024 election in November, each district will elect 3 councilors, thus increasing city council from 5 at-large members to 12 district representatives. Voter-approved city charter amendments tasked the development of an independent district commission to prepare and adopt voting districts. Primarily, this work involves engaging with community and consulting with experts to design voting districts. This summer's approved voting districts will remain in place until the next city charter review in 2030. On the independent commission, there are 13 voting members as well as alternates. All of us participated in a citywide application process. We were vetted by city staff, appointed by the mayor, and confirmed by city council in January of 2023. Per the title, the Independent District Commission is an independent community body authorized to create district voting plans on behalf of and accountable to Portland communities. A supermajority vote of 9 out of 13 commissioners is required to approve the final voting district plan. If after 2 votes, the district commission is unable to reach a supermajority, plans will be referred to the city council for its consideration and adoption. From February to March of this year, district commission foundational work was completed and a criteria was reviewed during public hearings. There was a provision allowing the district commission to adopt additional criteria, but following 2 months of public feedback, at a public hearing in April, the district commission voted not to add additional criteria. At the end of June, draft district maps were made available to the community to review and commentary. During July, we are required to hold 8 public hearings, 2 in each of the proposed districts before we vote on a district plan. But actually, in fact, we will hold 9, including this Zoom call, to solicit as much public feedback as possible. Per voter requirements, we cannot vote on a final district plan before August 15th or 30 days following the last public hearing on July 16th. While we received public comments to extend the timeline, per voter requirements, the district commission must adopt a plan by no later than September 1st of this year. Beyond being guided by voter approved requirements, the district commission is also guided by federal and state laws, including the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, as well as the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Under the 14th Amendment, there is a notion of one person, one vote, which requires that voting district must be of substantially equal population. Under the Voting Rights Act of 1965, district creation cannot discriminate on the basis of race, color, or membership in a protected language minority group. Additionally, it prohibits the districting for the purpose of or result in racial discrimination. Because populations shift over time, district boundaries must be redrawn in accordance with the U.S. Decennial Census taken every 10 years. While we receive community requests to consider future population shifts, we are legally bound to stick to the 2020 census data and allow 2030 data to inform future plans. Portland's voter approved district requirements are rooted in federal court precedent. As much as practicable, districts must, 1, be contiguous and compact, 2, utilize existing geographic and/or political boundaries, 3, be connected by transportation links, 4, be of equal population, 5, not be drawn to favor political party, incumbent elected officials, or either entity, or dilute the voting strength of any language or ethnic minority group. Lastly, they must not divide communities of common interest. Communities of common interest has been defined by national precedent as groups sharing policy concern and benefiting from alignment. Separating communities of interest have shown to result in decreased ability to advocate and effectuate community priorities. Please recall that the Independent District Commission decided not to amend these requirements. In determining draft district boundaries, the District Commission used various data sets to satisfy stated requirements. As an example, some data sets are presented on the screen. Use of some of these data sets were in fact requirements. For example, as stated previously, the 14th Amendment and the Voting Rights Act required the use of 2020 decennial census, as well as American Community Annual Survey data which provided additional demographic and socioeconomic data. Additionally, some data sets were used to define multiple requirements. As an example, school district boundaries could be used as proxies for political boundaries, as well as boundaries of common interest, as they reflect an aggregation of shared concerns. The District Commission relied upon consultants to support defining, aggregating, and analyzing the data. These subject matter experts provided us with guidance in overlaying socioeconomic, voter age, public transportation, home ownership, renter, and public service data. But defining communities of color, defining communities of common interest requires common input, common community feedback, community validation, and this is the crux of our work. It is listening to you and engaging with you that is most important for this work now. What common concerns do you have with your neighboring community? How far out do those common concerns radiate? Portlanders have engaged with the District Commission in a variety of ways to inform the creation of these draft maps. You are the author of these maps. We are attempting to draw these maps based upon your input. On the screen, you see engagement numbers as of May 30th. Throughout June and now into July, we've had hundreds of additional public comments with over 200 draft maps submitted by community members. Commissioners have attended community-led districting events, held individual meetings with community leaders, and spent many hours reflecting on your contributions. Throughout the process, the District Commission has centered on voices that have been historically disenfranchised from city decision-making. Now, my co-commissioner will now walk through the results of those efforts via an overview of draft maps.
Thank you, Commissioner Judd. As was just mentioned, on June 1st, the District Commission released 3 draft maps outlining possible boundaries for the new districts for community consideration. We named these maps Alder, Cedar, and Maple solely to help the community differentiate between the 3 maps. And each of the maps adhere to the district criteria that voters approved last November and are directly informed by the community input we've received to date. You may have noticed that all 3 of these maps share certain characteristics. For instance, the green zone that's to the far east, all of the communities east of I-205 are in a single district, which also includes the 4 non-Portland Public Schools districts, and those are Park Rose, David Douglas, Reynolds, and Centennial. The western border of this easternmost district runs along I-205 and 82nd to preserve the Jade District and Lentz neighborhood. Neighborhoods along the northern part of Portland are in a single district, with the exception of those neighborhoods in the Park Rose School District. And the north and south sides of Columbia Boulevard are included in the same district. Historic Albina in northeast Portland is preserved in a single district, and all communities west of the Willamette River are in a single district. But there are differences between the 3 maps. The first one is that all 3 of the maps must cross the Willamette River to achieve the equal population criteria, because the populated portion of that area is about 20,000 people short of what is needed. The Alder map crosses only in lower southeast to include the neighborhoods of Sellwood, Westmoreland, Eastmoreland, and Reed. The Cedar map crosses along the entire edge of the river from I-84 south, following transit corridors along Southeast 12th and the Max line. And the Maple map crosses in the central east side from I-84 south to Powell to include the Buckman and Kearns neighborhoods and part of Hosford Abernathy. Also, population needs to be balanced along the eastern boundary between the northeast, the yellow district, and the central southeast districts, which are the teal colored. The Alder map uses neighborhood organization boundaries and high school enrollment areas to do that balancing. The Cedar map uses Sandy Boulevard as a transit boundary that dissects a few of the neighborhoods north of 84 there. And the Maple map uses a combination of both elements. Now I'll go to the Alder map. So the Alder map is built around preserving established neighborhood boundaries. It divides the central city, which is where the blue, teal, and yellow districts intersect. It divides the central city among 3 districts using the Willamette River and I-84 as boundaries to encourage engagement across districts with central city issues and economic opportunities, and also to distribute significant public assets and institutions among multiple districts. Neighborhoods in Lower Southeast share a district with demographically and socioeconomically similar communities on the west side of the river and are connected by the Selwood and Ross Island bridges. The Cedar map is built around prioritizing transit corridors as boundaries. This map uses transit corridors such as Northeast Sandy, Southeast 12th Avenue, 82nd, and Max lines in recognition of the role they play in influencing the use of public space and notions of neighborhood on the eastern side of the city. Neighborhoods in the Central East Side and Inner Southeast that are bordered by the Willamette to the west and major transit lines to the east, both bus and Max, and connect by 8 bridges to share a district with neighborhoods on the west side of the river. And the Maple map is built around keeping much of the central city together as defined by the city's Central City 2035 plan, while preserving historic Albina. The central city includes the city's most densely populated and urbanized neighborhoods, where residential and commercial uses are tightly interwoven. East Side neighborhoods with high percentages of renters, Buckman, Kearns, and part of Hosford Abernathy, share a district with West Side renter-heavy neighborhoods, including Goose Hollow, Old Town, University, and South Waterfront. So the commission is committed to ensuring that the final district plan reflects the priorities of Portlanders of all backgrounds with a specific focus on creating equitable and inclusive process. Your feedback, questions, and concerns will be integral to informing the final district plan in August. And the questions on the slide are just representative examples of what we're hoping that you will reflect on and share with us. The importance of our task can't be overstated. Not only will these districts determine the makeup of the City Council for the November 2024 election, but the final map will be in place until after the 2030 census. We understand that some of what was presented today is unfamiliar, and we hope our presentation gave you a better understanding of our work. Before we begin the public testimony, I wanted to repeat the many other ways you can provide us with feedback or get questions answered. And you can actually now read all of the ways you can respond on the slide. Community members can submit comments through July 22nd. And as you can see, there are a lot of different ways that you can provide that feedback. You can submit comments through the online comment form at the commission website. You can send us an email. You can call 311 or send mail to the address that's on the screen. This concludes our presentation, and I'll now pass it off to our moderator to help us get started with public testimony.
Thank you, commissioners. So we will now begin our public testimony, and I'm going to explain how it's going to run. If any of you watched that very helpful and informative presentation and now feel compelled to testify, if you haven't done so already, you can sign up. So there are two ways for you to let us to know that you want to testify. First, you can raise your virtual Zoom hand and we'll note your name and put you in the queue. Or secondarily, you can put your name in the Q&A Zoom feature. Either way, put your name in either of those places and we'll be able to get you into the line. If you are calling in from your phone, you can raise your hand to let us know you want to testify by hitting *9 on your keypad. That will also mute or unmute. Oh no, that won't. You can also press *6 to mute and unmute when it's your turn to testify. When it is your turn, we're going to go down the list. We will call your name and bring you into the main Zoom. So please be sure to accept the invite when you see it. So everyone who is testifying, you will have 3 minutes to share your thoughts. There will be a timer on the screen that you can track your time by. It will be really present on the screen for you to see. And when you're giving your testimony, we ask that you please state your name, let us know your zip code or your neighborhood if you'd prefer. Let us know if you're testifying on behalf of an organization, and help by identifying the map that you are testifying about. And lastly, if you can please remember to go slowly for our interpreters. And before I start calling folks in, there's just one more item that I need to share with you. We would really appreciate it if everyone today would follow some rules of conduct. So disruptive conduct, such as interrupting someone or not concluding your testimony or yelling or using foul language, will not be allowed. So if there are any disruptions, a warning will be given, and then a further warning may result in you being muted or removed for the remainder of the meeting. We just want to make sure that everyone who signs up can be heard and that the testimony is respectful. So thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome and safe. So let me look to the sign-up sheet to begin calling folks into the room. I will be calling names in sets of 3. And so when you hear your name, you'll receive a Zoom invite. Please accept that invite, and then I will call you one at a time to speak. So the first 3 people signed up to testify are Rick Johnson, John Gibbon, and Christina May Enguk Westbrook. Let me check the room. Rick, have you joined us?
Rick just accepted the invite. Oh, there.
Rick, welcome to the hearing. You have 3 minutes to testify.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I would like to say that I don't see where the timer is, but whatever. Yeah, I'm from a homeowner in the Buckman neighborhood, and I, am a proponent of the Alder map, which leaves Buckman on the east side, where it is the oldest historic neighborhood on the east side. So I don't know why we're going to go over to the west side when you have other neighborhoods that are much more newer neighborhoods and much more socially and demographically aligned with the west side, such as Selwood and Eastmoreland. And and the west side being all at one, you're once again, we're consolidating power to the west side. The east side never had representatives. That's one of the reasons that this happened, because all the council members were from the west side. So what do? We just make it one big happy family over there and break up the east side. So I have a real problem with this. And I think it's not fair to do this. And I don't know what your reasoning is. You have said that you're against separating communities of commonality. Well, I have nothing in common with the west side. The Buckman has been a neighborhood on the east side with the Central East Side Industrial District as part of our neighborhood also. We work together. I have been on homeless issues, and I've had numerous people say homeless people don't even go to the west side if they're homeless on the east side because they don't like it. You know, it goes all the way down the food chain. And you said you're informed by community input. We're just doing public testimony now, so I don't know where you got the community input. Maybe it was from wealthy West Side donors, I don't know. Or, you know, wealthier neighborhoods that threaten you to sue you. Who knows? I've seen it before in other public meetings where the west side will come in and say, we're going to file a lawsuit. And everybody backs away. So I just think that for the Alder map, leaving Buckman, which once again is the oldest East Side neighborhood on the east side, and you know, we've already been split up with our voting district on the federal level, and now you're gonna, you know, rape us again. So anyway, that is my testimony, and I appreciate you taking it.
Thank you, Rick. John, you are next.
Hi, I'm John Gibbon. I live in the Markham neighborhood in 97219, which is south of I-5, and now in the 5th Congressional District. And I support the Maple configuration. I know that that the west side has to take in some of the east side, and I'm sorry that it upsets the gentleman that spoke right before me, but I've got to say that the west side has some issues that probably are better dealt with by being connected to what you've described as the center city. We have significant infrastructure needs that I worry, if we're not connected through the center city, won't be given full consideration. As I told some members of this board when I was asking some questions at the Sunday meeting over in Southwest at the community center, I was on the Portland Public Utility Review Board, which was an organization that represented districts in the city, or at least some of its representation represented districts in the city. And one of the things I learned from being on that board and other involvement with the city over a 50-year professional career and educational career was that the city of Portland has some very major infrastructure issues. Our water system especially is something that ties the whole city together, and that most of the critical connections between East and West Portland are in the central city area, just because historically that was where the water pipes were built. We've got a big challenge in maintaining those maintaining those connections and having earthquake-proof connections to the west side, which we need because the water comes from Bull Run. We've made one attempt to make that connection and that's failed. I think that there's a bridge being considered at Burnside that perhaps could be used to make an earthquake-proof connection for water across the city, and that favors the Maple connection. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, John. I'm going to give it a minute for the timer to turn over for our next testifier, who will be Christina. Christina, have you come into the webinar?
Sure.
I want to make sure that you're here. Could you say hello?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Wonderful. Yes, we can.
I don't know if I have my, do I have my video on. I can't see myself, so.
I can't see you, but we can hear you loud and clear. Go ahead.
Okay.
Christina, if you're talking, you've muted yourself.
You see and hear me.
Yes, we can. Thank
Okay,
you.
hi. I'm Christina Miangook Westbrook. I live in the Buckman neighborhood. I also am in support of the Alder map. I would say the biggest reasons for supporting the Alder map is because the East Side does have a very strong sense of identity, and splitting us up splits us up into potentially like not being able to be parts of us might not be able to be a part of Southeast Uplift. Our neighborhood association would be divided, and where, after COVID, we're already struggling to, solidify the neighborhood association again post-COVID. I find it interesting that none of these in-person events are happening anywhere near our neighborhoods, the ones that will be split up the most. And the point that keeps being brought up is that the East Side and the West Side both have a lot of renters, but that lumps people with less influence and less money together to just not be able to have as much say, because they'll be drowned out by the people who have more money and more influence, potentially from the West Side, that will be able to come to these meetings, that will be able to, just have their political agenda as the ones that are heard the most. Just in general, I would say the Alder map just makes most sense for keeping communities together. And I'm sure a couple other people might have more to say on that, but that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your testimony. The next 3 people who are signed up and will be sent invites to enter into the Zoom room are Susan Lindsay, Terry Harris, and Candace Lettingham Ramos. Susan, have you joined the Zoom?
Jamie, Susan is in the room.
Susan, it's your turn to testify. You have 3 minutes.
This is Susan, but not Susan Lindsay. Shall I
Oh.
go ahead?
Hold on a sec.
This is Susan Pierce.
Yeah, maybe we wrote the wrong name down. I'm not sure.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if Susan Lindsay is also in line here. I know she has things to say.
Okay, give us a second to figure out.
Okay. Susan Lindsay is coming in the room. 1 sec.
Thank you, Sophia.
Okay, Susan Lindsay is in the room.
There we go. Hello. I've been saying, where's the invite? Where's the invite? You were calling my name. Hello, everybody. I'm Susan Lindsay. I'm co-chair of the Buckman Community Association. Very glad to have this opportunity to speak in front of you today. The more I learn about this process, the more I get involved. We met again last night, the entire board and the association, and again, hands down, rejecting of the Maple and the Cedar maps. With all respect to the gentleman from South Waterfront, I was involved with the 2035 plan, and I can promise you the Central City is not really the Central City if you cut out all of the Northeast segment of it, which is what this plan does. It calls for most of the Central City. But I want to get to my main points, which has to do with the communities of commonality. You know, we've just been working like dogs to put together a movie tonight, an event, and for the Buckman Picnic, which we ran for 11 years and we brought back for the first time in 3 years. And we always reach out to Richmond, Sunnyside, Han, Kearns, Laurelhurst, all of that. We never reach out to the west side. Our communities of commonality are on the east side. They've always been on the east side, and we have reams and reams of evidence of that. We were not, I appreciate that you reached out and took care of the Jade District, Lents, North Portland, both sides of Columbia Boulevard, Albina, historic Albina. You didn't reach out to us, and yet none of these hearings are being held in the areas that are being kind of carved up to satisfy the fact that for some reason you don't want to subdivide the west side. By maintaining the west side, you have created a population problem that men must kind of poach somewhere on the east side. If you have to poach on the east side, we're definitely going to say you have to poach with the Alder plan, because you need to be able to put the higher socioeconomic folks, homeowners, with the majority of the homeowners and of wealth on the west side. To make an argument that you want to take the renters in Buckman and Kearns and lump them with renters diffuses not only the progressive political nature of Buckman, one of the most progressive neighborhoods in the entire city, it diffuses it if you put it with the entire west side, but also what you do is you diffuse the power of the renters. And we already have Commissioner Dan Ryan saying he wants to reduce the number of the delegates. So then how will Buckman and Kearns ever have anybody elected? Never will. We'll just be this little weird appendage. And that's not right. You need to reach out to the neighborhoods that are being affected by this. I know you're having a lot of hearings and the ones that are not, but you need to reach out to us. So we reject it based on the communities of commonality. We are not in common. And we vote for the Alder plan if you must pick one of these, or you're going to need to redraw and consider chopping up the west side and taking a look at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan. Terry, I see you. You are ready. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm Terry Harris. I'm from Hillsdale on the west side. Speaking only for myself today. As you know, I've testified previously before your commission, and I will actually reiterate some of my comments from previously because they're becoming true now based on the testimony I've heard today. And I've had the opportunity to skim the written comments in the public comment report for June that have very similar themes. You know, you've created 3 maps and you're having people commenting on which of the 3 they like best, which traps them into fighting from one neighborhood against another. And it's not surprising that the appendages, the stranded neighborhoods of Buckman don't like the Maple map. And the stranded neighborhoods of Sellwood don't like the Alder and Cedar maps. It's not surprising. It's something that I told you is going to happen, and it is happening. And it's because you unnecessarily constrained the maps that you look at for your final 3, and you unnecessarily constrained the ones that you put out for public comment. It's not necessary to strand neighborhoods in a multi-member district scenario when you can balance across the river. You can balance the east side and west side so that both sides of the river would have representation in their delegation to City Hall. And you can do that by using a central district. I created a central district for you to look at early on, which didn't take into account some of the other criteria that you considered. So I took another crack at it, called it Cherry, and it's in your files, and you can take a look at it. It's probably not perfect either, but it takes into account your desire for a Western district. It follows the northwest, north and south boundaries along Sandy, plus or minus, that you have before. but it balances the east and west populations and voters in both the West District and in a central district. It solves your problems. It solves the neighborhood problems. And I think you need to take another look at it when you reconvene after all these public hearings. Thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you, Terry. Next testifier is Candace.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Candace Lettingham Ramos. I live at the border between Multnomah and Clackamas County. I live on 82nd, well, just west of it. And from what I see, it does not, although the boundary line that you're putting out for between the teal and the green are what in my opinion, good ones, you know, for keeping the jade and all that. I'm not sure that I and that everybody else, perhaps everybody on this comment on this meeting understands why specifically, I guess, why specifically you would have chosen to go directly along the 84 on Cedar, and why on the Maple does the west side come over to the Willamette, or come over the Willamette to the Kern. And my opinion is that Alder should be considered quite heavily because of the equitability, well, the attempted equitability that it gives towards the high renter areas of, you know, Kearns and Beckman. That is all I have to say. Thank you. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you, Candace. You too. The next three people signed up on our list to testify are Dr. Jim Gaudino, Martha Mattis, and a phone number that ends in 2002. So first up will be Dr. Gaudino.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I had audio issues with my other connection. Thank you so much. This is Jenny, and thanks to everybody. I joined the Southwest interaction on Sunday, and I have some other additional questions. I'm a little bit agnostic to the differences in the plans or the maps. Just eyeballing and hearing a little bit, I don't feel an affinity with the Sellwood community. I'm a renter, and yes, I'm a doctor. I'm a prevention expert, board certified physician, but I'm a renter, and I'm concerned that my voice, our voice, gets washed out by the powerful voices, more powerful voices here in the Southwest. There is an observation, and I brought this up in the meeting. I love the tables that came with the handout, but those are basically distribution by race. That's only one of the criteria that you described in the presentation. I would like to see some of the other criteria laid out in a table like the handout, rather than going to the map and trying to guess, who am I going to be able to partner with best in my community. And I appreciate the activities and activism of the neighborhood association Buckman. I heard what you said. I think the other part of this is, and I brought this up earlier, I truly have a concern about this process of engagement. 200 people responding plus these rushed meetings is just simply not community engagement. This is one of my areas of expertise. I understand the timeline, and I thank you guys for working on this, but I think it's inadequate, and we really should be getting more feedback even as the maps are adapted. And I would ask the commission to go back and ask for more funding to engage more community members. And I thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Martha?
Yes.
Hello.
Hello, my name is Martha Mattis. I live in the Selwood community, and I am speaking in favor of the Maple configuration. I feel that the Selwood Moreland area is an integral part of the Southeast, and that we do not belong with the west side of the river. There is no regular transit that gets across the Selwood Bridge. There's a bus that goes only during rush hour. All the transit, the Orange Line and my local bus line, which runs up and down 13th, go north and south and connect in downtown Moreland to the rest of the east side. And I feel that the character of our neighborhood, both in terms of the geography, the residents, the type of buildings that are here, the neighborhood businesses are more similar with those in the rest of the Southeast than we are with the west side of the river. I feel that the river is in fact a boundary rather than a connection, to that the Southeast has more in common with that Selwood has more in common with the rest of the Southeast and even the near and Northeast than we do with the west side of the river. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. The next person to testify is calling in from a phone number that ends in 2002. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Fantastic. Just as a reminder.
This is Todd Stiles. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. Can you start by giving us your name and your zip code?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Stiles, live in the Buckman neighborhood. Live and work in the Buckman neighborhood, have for 15 plus years. And I mean, I guess I would try and echo the things that Susan Lindsay and Rick said, and some of the other people that were speaking about Alder. So I won't really repeat any of that. I think one thing that the lack of input from our neighborhood, like awareness and input prior to these maps coming together, is a bit shocking. And equally kind of disturbing is the fact that there isn't an option that divides the west side in some way. And it seems like if we're actually going to vote on this and talk about equity, there should at least be an option that shows the west side sacrificing something somewhere. Because to put Buckman and tie it with the west side, I mean, Rick said we have nothing in common with the west side. And, you know, the one who just spoke about Selwood, she didn't have anything with the west side. So why pick on our two neighborhoods to try and figure out a way to let the west side sort of ride on its own? So, I mean, so definitely Alder, it seems like, well, we like Alder, but then Selwood doesn't like Alder. So then maybe there's, what is it, Cedar that kind of goes, but you know, still that one isn't, that pulls part of the east side over. But I guess I would say I would vote for Alder, probably Cedar secondly, but I'd love to have an option that I could vote on that splits the west side. And I'd like, as the previous gentleman spoke about, having some more input and extending this process so that we could really talk about some options. Maybe there are more districts, and then, you know, so I don't know, maybe that's part of maybe we can't adjust that, but there's got to be a more equitable way to do this than to just sort of pick and choose a couple of neighborhoods that you're going to mess with, make the West Side happy. And you know, it's either Selwood or Buckman or Kearns. But, you know, I mean, while you're at it, why don't you just pick someplace way out by the airport or something, some random area? I don't know. But there are no connections. So anyhow, I agree with the whole Alder crew. And but more than that, I'd love to have some time and some more input and some more choices that show some at least thought that maybe the West Side could give something up. I mean, here it's clear, don't mess with the West Side. West Side's good, we got you covered. We'll just mess with the East Side wherever we can, whoever gets the least amount of votes. So I'd love to see some of that equity. That's all I got.
Thank you very much for your testimony. The last two people on our list that we'll bring into the room are Beth Shavilicek, apologies if I mispronounce that name, and Susan Pierce. Beth, are you in the room?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you.
Awesome.
You have
You also
3
got
minutes.
that last name pretty perfect, which is astounding. Yeah, hello, everyone. My name is Beth Shavilicek. I use them pronouns, and today I'm speaking on behalf of Unite Oregon. Unite Oregon is a statewide nonprofit organization that is led by immigrants and refugees, people of color, rural communities, and people experiencing poverty. Our organization represents over 30,000 members across the state with a significant membership base in Portland. Today, I'm advocating for the Alder map as the most equitable option. In our view, this map is the only one that prioritizes community relationships and ensures that historically marginalized communities have the power, resources, and opportunities to organize and create strength. By including Selwood with the West Side, we can prevent wealthy individuals from taking over the election process. We believe that the Alder map is the most fair and inclusive option, and we urge you to consider it. We have concerns about the Maple map, which may exploit Central East Side renters, people experiencing poverty. Community members have expressed to us their concerns about this map, and we believe that it is not an equitable option. We do not think that the West Side Portlanders can represent Central East Siders in a fair and equitable manner. However, we do believe that the West Siders and Selwood residents have more common interests that could lead to a mutually beneficial relationship. We also acknowledge that the Cedar map may be the map of the future, especially in light of OMSI's planned developments and the 2035 plan. However, we believe that this map may not accurately represent the current residents of Portland. OMSI's development is not yet underway, and the year is not 2035. So we urge you to consider a Cedar map option more after the 2030 census. Lastly, I just want to say that we really appreciate all the effort that you have put into creating these maps and hosting these public hearings. I've been to the ones this week, and we'll be at them this weekend. So I just really appreciate you all taking the time out to listen to folks and to engage with community members. And yeah, so thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Beth. Before we move to Susan, I just want to note that we had an additional sign up. Marianne Fitzgerald will be invited into the room, which is a really good reminder that if you have not signed up and you are moved to testify, it's not too late. The instructions for how to let us know that you would like to testify are in the chat. Susan Pierce, are you ready to testify?
Hi, yes, I am.
Fantastic.
Shall I start?
Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Susan Pierce. I am a resident homeowner of Hosford Abernathy neighborhood, next door to Buckman. Where to start? This whole process and the concepts I've seen so far have left me speechless. I share the sentiments of everything we've heard from the Buckman residents, but I cannot speak in favor of any of the plans that we see so far. In every case, the West Side remains intact. Some segment of the East Side is chopped into, sliced up into an appendage. I like that word. I fully expect that I'm also, by the way, sympathetic with the woman from Solwood. I fully expect that the likelihood that all three representatives in a district that includes East Side would be coming from the West Side, so that the East Side appendage has no representation at all. This is unacceptable to me. A recent suggestion that came from someone in hand, but also from the gentleman, one of the gentlemen we heard from earlier today or more, is that the West Side be divided in a way that that it can be connected with East Side neighborhoods, respecting the boundaries of the neighborhoods, please. In a way that is more equitable, so there are even numbers of people in a district coming from the West Side and the East Side. And again, that the neighborhood boundaries be respected. This is an equitable way of doing it. I urge you to go back to the drawing board, even though the timeline, it disrupts the timeline, and rethink the way those boundaries are written so that there's more even distribution spanning the Willamette River. Hope that makes sense. And thank you for the work you've done, and thank you for listening. But again, please rethink this.
Thank you, Susan. Appreciate your testimony. The next person to testify, and it looks like we're still bringing people in, so I'll call your name after Mary Ann. Mary Ann, are you in the room?
Looks like I am. Thank you for having me. I also attended the hearing on Sunday, and since then I've had a conversation with my neighborhood. I live in the Crestwood neighborhood, which is in Southwest Portland. My house is 3 houses from the city of Tigard. Like the woman said, living on the border between Multnomah County and Washington County. Sometimes I feel more affinity with the other county than with the city of Portland. But I just wanted to say that both my personal preference and my neighborhood association's preference is for the Alder map, because it best reflects the neighborhood boundaries. The issue that I have, and what, you know, the commissioners of the IDC blame it on the Charter Commission measure, is that the measure said that there will be 4 districts. You know, I didn't make up the 4 districts. I preferred 7 districts to follow the coalition boundaries. You know, there's other ways to slice it up, but you know, why did the Charter Commission choose 4 districts with 3 counselors each and not 6 districts with 2 counselors each? You know, if Commissioner Ryan and Gonzalez are going to put a ballot measure before the voters to look at revising the charter, maybe we should look at a different number of districts that might provide more equitable maps based on the comments that you've received today. So I also want to request that there be better documentation, because the materials that I find online tell us why what we've decided is such a good idea, and don't tell us what issues we've considered and why we arrived at that decision. I've really never seen a good analysis of the decisions. And, you know, the only information in the IDC report was 3 sentences per map and a bunch of tables. So the charter reform needs to be better documented on how you arrived at decisions so that we can have an opinion on specific issues and really have more meaningful community engagement on what we want, rather than agreeing or not agreeing with what you think we want. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much. There are an additional 2 people who have signed up on the list. Just as a reminder, if you want to testify, the instructions to do so are in the chat. It really consists of raising your Zoom hand in the chat or in the Q&A. So the next 2 people on the list are Ethan Orion and Amy. And I believe, Ethan, you are in the room?
Yes. I am.
Just as a reminder to please state your
um,
name, your zip code. You have 3 minutes.
Great, thank you. My name is Ethan Orion, 97205, although I grew up in across the river, 97214. I'm not a strong proponent of any of these maps, although I do think that someone else made this point earlier, but like I think the Maple map really does a disservice to a lot of renters on the east side. So if we were to choose among these, I would, cast a negative vote on the Maple map. I do want to raise one thing that has not been discussed or noted, which is that if this commission does not, from my understanding from the presentation, if this commission does not make a decision, it's going to go to the city council. As much as I wish that we have something that focused on transit corridors and was breaking up the west side some more, kind of a redo of Cedar perhaps, I do believe that the decision that this commission makes, if it makes a decision, is probably going to be better than what the city council does at the moment. So I wanted to voice support for the commission, doing their best to come to a decision. I know that the timeline is short. I would really love it if there were more maps, could be more discussion. But I did want to raise that point because I don't think anyone else raised it. I also just want to thank not just everybody who's involved in this, but I also want to thank everyone who is showing up and making their voices heard here and in other spots. Democracy is super messy, and I just really appreciate when people engage in it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And the last person on our list is Amy. Hello, Amy. I see you. Go ahead.
Hi, hello, good afternoon. My name is Amy Wood, and I reside in the 97209 zip code on the west side. I appreciate all of the work that you've put into this process. I know it has been difficult, and you will never make all of us happy. I empathize with many of the comments from my neighbors on the east side. While I'm a west sider, I do empathize with their concerns and frustrations. But I'd like to just comment on, there's been several folks mentioning that we should break up the west side or give the west side a little bit of the pain here. And I just want to point out that through this, it's likely that the west side will only have 3 out of the 12 commissioners. We could, in fact, even have less than that if we end up, if one of the elected commissioners with our district actually resides in, on the east side. So the fact is, the west side is going to come out of this with a pretty small representation. But I want to also point out the value of the west side to the entire city, that we shouldn't be looking to minimize west side influence. While we have a smaller population, and that's in fact making it difficult to contain the west side as its own district, the west side is incredibly important to the vitality of Portland. Our downtown has been struggling, and we need commissioners who understand the value of the west side to all of us as Portlanders. And one of the most concerning things that's come out of all of the times that I've listened in to these sessions about the districts has been the fact that this almost seems to be fracturing us into districts that are very self-seeking. We know that charter reform was designed to give more of us voices, and that's a great thing. But the end result of this cannot be a Portland split into 4 districts, only looking out for ourselves. The end of this has to be a resulting citywide ability to have more voices at the table. And it's going to result in here, some of us are going to not feel like we purposely see ourselves in every part of the maps. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I am checking our list and I see that nobody else has signed up, so I'm going to give it just a few seconds for anyone who may be so moved to sign up to testify. Please let us know in the chat. Raise your Zoom hand, give us an indication. I see Sharon Fuchs has raised their hand. Can we bring Sharon into the room? Sharon, if you could accept the invite. Is Sharon here?
Yes.
Great. Sharon, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I am not sure how to accept the invite. Can you see me?
You
Maybe
have, you are in the room and we can hear you.
Maybe I video. There I am. Okay. Thank you for extending the comments period. I wanted to express, just based on hearing what other people have been saying, I live in the Rose City Park neighborhood, 97213. I happen to be on the land use committee for the neighborhood association. I am not a board member with the neighborhood association, and I am quite chagrined that our neighborhood association has not brought this subject forth within our neighborhood association at all. We've had no meetings on it, no discussions, nothing. However, the Roseway Neighborhood Association immediately to the east has had many and came to a consensus on what map they would like. So given the prior comments and what I just said, I'm thinking that the neighborhood associations themselves need to be drawn into this conversation. The whole point of the neighborhood associations were to garner voices. The history of the neighborhood associations were, they were given, as long as they would have a boundary and they would organize themselves and go under a coalition, that they would have a voice with the city. And somehow that process has been pushed aside and this independent commission has been developed. And I appreciate what you're doing in your outreach and your attempts for engagement, but that system was set up already through the neighborhood associations. And I would have liked to have seen perhaps asking the neighborhood associations, what do you have in common with other neighborhood associations that might bring you into a commissioner divided map? I'm sad that our neighborhood association has done zero. I'm sorry, but it had you gone to the coalitions, of which there's 7, they could have done the outreach and gathered the neighborhood associations to have this discussion. And every voice counts. I'm looking for diversity of opinion, old ladies like myself and every other person that has, in this survival that we are all engaged in to go forth. So maybe some outreach to the neighborhood associations now might be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do not see anyone else signed up, but this is going to be last call. If you want to raise your Zoom hand to be asked to be invited into the room to testify. I'm going to give it a few seconds more. Are there any final testifiers today before we close public comment? Just as a reminder, once I close it, I can't reopen it. We might be able to answer some questions, but we won't be able to take 3-minute testimony anymore for this hearing. Just 1 second. Looks like we might have. I have been asked to ask the co-chairs. It looks like Dr. Gaudino, who has already testified, would like to testify again. I'd like a decision by the co-chairs. We don't necessarily have an official rule. I'm not sure.
Is this a question or is this an amendment to his prior 3 statements? It
looks like he's just asked to testify again. Let me check. Additional comments?
Okay, let's go. He's okay, let's do it. We're gonna have to have a strict adherence to the 3-minute rule. Otherwise, it's a matter of equity where folks are making additional comments that are extending actually beyond the 3 minutes.
Commissioner Judd, we can absolutely ask them to provide the additional comments in writing if you would prefer that. There are multiple ways to provide additional.
That actually, I think that's a great request and way to
Okay.
manage it. Jamie, appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Godino, hopefully you can hear us. We would really appreciate it if you would provide your additional comments in writing. We've provided multiple opportunities to do so. If you need a specific instruction on how to provide that additional commentary, we can provide that in the chat. And thank you so much again for being here. Commissioners, I am going to officially close public comment with that in mind. And there are a few questions that we have time to answer if you would like to do so. I'm just looking in the room for a thumbs up from the commissioners that you would like to answer some of the questions that came up during testimony. I see that. Okay. There are a number of questions that were asked kind of multiple times, so I will probably only be asking them once or combining them in a way where we can get a single answer. Just bear with me while I pull up some of the questions we received. And then commissioners, because I can't see all of you like I usually do in our kind of in-person hearings, if you could raise your Zoom hand to let me know that you'd like to speak on or answer the question, that'd be great, and then I'll call you. So here's the first question. For the Cedar map, why was the 84 transit corridor not used to define the district boundary? Commissioner Laurenti?
Yeah, so as we described in the opening educational presentation, the Cedar Map's guiding rationale is to follow those transit corridors that bring communities together. The reason why it doesn't follow the Max Line I-84 boundary for further east is largely population balancing. That central east side part of the city and further east is very densely populated. So adjusting those boundaries can shift the population balance quite a bit. So that is why that corridor, that boundary between that North Portland district and the Southeast Central district is one of the key areas of difference, is because there's a lot of population density in that area. And moving that line slightly from Sandy Boulevard to the I-84 Max Line would change that balance quite significantly.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm not seeing any other hands who'd like to answer that. Seemed a pretty comprehensive response. So here is a question that has come up multiple times, and perhaps it's a little bit outside of your scope. So if you don't want to answer, let us know. But the question really revolves around why not more map options? And as part of that question, why was it just 4 districts chosen with 3 representatives? Does somebody want to at least attempt an answer knowing that you are not the Charter Commission? Okay, I see hands in order. Commissioner Judd.
Yeah, I think this is a great question. It keeps coming back. And so obviously this is a huge concern for community members and necessary for us to address this appropriately. And so I think if we go through this process, both as community members and commissioners, there's a huge request of trust, and trust in that each of us are looking out for each other and not doing things in with a sense of harm or some level of retribution. And so when the Charter Commission, I believe, was attempting to do this, their notion was, how do you begin this transformation process in the most equitable and the sort of ideally the most expedient way possible And we've heard some commentary from those folks who were part of this, and they just felt as if the Ford districts was the best way to kind of get started. As commissioners that were selected to help execute the voter requirements, we are working within those well-defined requirements of having just 4 districts. And those 4 districts also have, as we talked about earlier in the presentation, legal requirements and precedents that we must follow, whether it's the equal population, whether it's the no discriminatory impacts, as well as what data sets we're actually legally bound to use. It's within those criteria that we're attempting to aggregate the feedback, the vote against the voter requirements, and against the legal precedents to come up with a sense of balance. It is fair to challenge what sort of formation of these lines represent best the community. This is why we're actually coming to the community, seeking this level of engagement to help us understand that. It is an ongoing process. And I think there was one of the questions earlier saying, how did you initially develop feedback? And if we're doing this process now, where did the earlier feedback come from? Well, that earlier feedback came from a series of public hearings, open and the gathering of public commentaries that took place February through March, and a very transparent process. Was it perfect? By no means. Was it perfect? I'm not sure if perfection is the objective of what it is that we're challenged to do. But obviously, and I think all the commissioners would agree that it is about being as equitable as possible. And so that's our biggest mission. I think if you apply, and I think this is because we repeatedly heard about how you build these maps. I think it is worth the effort for the commission and staff to come up with maybe a video presentation or tutorial. We did tutorials about how to use the tool. We did not do a tutorial about how, if you use these tools and you build these data sets, how there's a leading to a convergence that looks very similar to these maps that you see presented to you. Because of the requirements, because of the data sets, these formations that you see become like the convergence of a lot of that effort. I think it's worth putting that together so that community members can validate this and see for themselves how these formations were created. But it doesn't answer these more subjective questions about boundaries, preferences, radiation of communities of common interest and how far out they go. We're still left with that. And so those are the very important questions that we're still struggling with, and the community members need to struggle with. And so that for this question around Sellwood and the level of engagement with Sellwood and these smaller communities, the level of engagement with the Buckman communities are very well taken. And it is our efforts to come back to those community members and have a more focused conversation.
Thank you. Commissioner Siegel.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I agree completely with everything that Commissioner Judd just said, so I will not repeat it. But I do agree with it completely. As a couple of other commissioners have heard me mention in previous hearings, what you're being presented with has been 3 draft conceptual maps. It's been based upon input that we've received through hundreds of maps, through outreach. We've really done, we've been asking quite often for assistance in defining communities of common interest. The more information you can provide us with that, will help us do our job. It's not that we haven't been looking, and we're still looking for it. So I want to say that we're not trying, and I will take exception to a couple of the comments that we've heard today. I know that's not a popular thing for commission members to do, but we're not trying to do anything to a particular neighborhood. Somebody talked about raping a neighborhood. That's totally inappropriate and counterproductive. What would be appropriate and productive, in this commissioner's opinion, is to submit a map. It's not too late. And as a number of you have noted, it's not that hard to do. The cherry map that was referred to today by someone who was testifying, I took a quick look at it. Thank you very much for submitting it. That's exactly the type of input that is the most productive and will likely be paid the most attention to by a commissioner like me, because you're not just throwing a mental tomato or a rock at something, you're coming up with a constructive criticism and a suggestion of perhaps another way to go. And I encourage all of you who have testified more than once, please testify again and be constructive and provide an alternative. In the meantime, we'll do all that we can as a commission and with the assistance of staff to continue to reach out to neighborhood associations, neighborhood association districts. The boundaries of neighborhood associations and districts has not gone unnoted nor undiscussed. And neighborhood association boundaries have been very well respected during our process. Not necessarily the districts and the grouping of neighborhoods, but the neighborhood boundaries themselves. And perhaps more attention needs to be paid to districts as opposed to just the neighborhood associations and their boundaries. So we are, as a commission, we're committed to doing our job. We're committed to reaching a decision, so it doesn't have to go into the lap of city council. Help us get there. Submit a map, submit some constructive criticism. For those who already have, I thank you very much. For those who are looking for a platform to just to be heard or vent about something, that's completely valid as well. But help us out. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Siegel. And you, I think, just answered a question that I was going to pose in a few minutes, which is, are these the final maps? Are there additional considerations that you will take in? So I think you very clearly said, yes, you are still considering adjustments to the map. Commissioner Van Sickle Robbins.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to echo what was just said about going online and taking a stab at creating a map yourself and sending it to us, because it is really a Rubik's Cube of a puzzle to try and work through the population distributions in the city of Portland as you try and figure out how to draw the district maps. And I just wanted to have people, if they haven't looked recently, to go look at the 4 zones that exist for Multnomah County commissioners. And you can see the choices that were made on those of having to cross certain boundaries or geographic elements of our city to capture additional population. They had to go through the same process of balancing as we do. And it may be that a lot of folks, because they haven't had the opportunity, access, reason for looking at population distribution in Portland, they might not have gone to see that on the west side of the river, 60% of that population is south of downtown, which is counterintuitive. I think people think that the density would extend above that. On the east side, in that central east side area, there are twice as many people north of Holgate to 84 between the river and 82nd than south of that. And so as you start to look at chopping up the west side, it makes for some very strange combinations that you end up having to make to achieve the population. And the final thing I would just ask people to consider is that all of the wealth and power in Portland does not reside in downtown or in the Portland Heights. In fact, if you look at where city council members and county commissioners have come from over time, there are some neighborhoods on the east side, in the southeast, in the northeast, that have populated a lot of those council and commissioner positions. And so if you're a community of color or a low-income community or a renter community of low income, and you have not had representation, you might be worried if we created 3 districts that each have a very wealthy, long-time connected, powerful set of neighborhoods in them, and whether or not you, as the other neighborhoods in that district or the other communities in that district, might be drowned out by those centers being able to elect more than their share of council members. So I just would ask people to keep all that in mind as they create maps, consider the work that we're trying to do and all the balancing that we're trying to do of criteria and the whole purpose of the charter reforms. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. That also answered another question that was in the queue about why you haven't provided any options that split the west side. So Commissioner Fleischman, would you like to comment?
Yes, thank you. I'll put my hand down after I finish, so don't worry about that. I just wanted to add a little bit more to Commissioner Van Sickle-Robbins' last observation, but also other observations in response to how did we draw the maps, what did we consider, and so on and so forth, which is a little bit of a subtext of a set of the questions that have already been posed. As we said at the beginning, part of our job was to provide an educational presentation that is about how we have gone about our business, how did we get to where we are. And I feel like it's incumbent upon us to also be responsive to the facts of the matter. While we are all entitled to a variety of opinions and we want to hear them, as Ethan said, democracy is super messy. And we're seeing it right now. I just wanted to put some facts on the table for those who are still participating. The first is just to kind of expand on what Commissioner Van Sickle-Robbins said around where have commissioners come from historically. There was an Oregonian article about 10 years ago now that looked at where all of the commissioners had come in the current form of government since the founding of that form of government. When they looked at this, they said 49 members of city council had essentially come from a few neighborhoods in Portland's central east side. So unlike kind of most of the kind of maybe sense that we have that folks come from the west side who serve on city council, a large proportion of folks have come from the central east side. In fact, when the Oregonian did this study, they found that folks came from a 7-square-mile corridor bounded by Martin Luther King Boulevard, Northeast Alberta Street, 47th Avenue, and Southeast Hawthorne Boulevard. And at that point, just one, and this was mentioned yesterday also at our hearing, just one politician had come from East Portland. That was Randy Leonard. So I think it's important for us to carry certain facts and try to be accurate as opposed to kind of rely on our impressions. So that's the facts. The fact is that city council has not been dominated by the West Side. It has been dominated largely by people who come from largely privileged neighborhoods on the East Side. So that's the first thing. The second is the notion that the West Side is populated by wealthy individuals and exclusively by wealthy individuals. I think that, again, is not borne out by the facts. For my first 10 years of living in Portland, I was an East Sider. Currently, for the last 5 years, I've been a West Sider. I will tell you that the neighborhood I live in has a poverty rate of 16 to 26%. You can look this up online because Portland provides this, and it provides a map of poverty concentrations. Commissioner Chisholm shared this with me when we were having earlier conversations about drawing maps and thinking about the level of poverty. I looked also across the river on the East Side, and some of the East Side neighborhoods that are most concerned right now about the dominance of the wealthy West Side actually have rates of poverty that are less than 10%. So I think that we need to keep our facts straight around concentration of poverty. One of the great concentrations of poverty is in Center City, Portland. And those are people who have historically, as we know throughout this country, been disenfranchised and not engaged. So again, I feel incumbent as a commissioner to share facts that help to inform our drawing. And then the last thing, I checked right before I started my comments and was really pleased to see that Terry Harris, who referenced the Cherry map, which also was referenced by Commissioner Siegel. I took a look at that map also. And again, this is an opportunity to just, Terry, I really appreciate that you took the time to try to come up with a solution. I want to assure you and everybody else listening, we came up with a variety of solutions. We were able to categorize them as different design approaches. The one that you're seeing right now were 3 variants of an approach that at the time that we published them seemed to be the most appropriate. Terry, if you looked at your map, which unites part of the West Side, kind of the Center City part, and then goes all the way past Mount Tabor on the East Side and into the Montevilla neighborhood and others, if you were a sitting commissioner having to hear concerns that were being expressed by folks in other neighborhoods, we might have heard today from folks in Montevilla, Mount Tabor, and some of the neighborhoods that we've heard from today and saying the same thing. Why do we have to be connected to the West Side? Similarly, areas all the way out to Mount Scott might be saying, why do we have to be connected to the West Side in your map? We have nothing to do, as we've heard several times, folks saying, we have nothing to do with the West Side. I want to close by reminding everybody, we have everything to do with Portland. All of us are Portlanders, and we are trying to come up with a solution that for this cycle allows us to best give an opportunity for districts to elect folks that can truly represent them. I want to kind of close with that and say, I know that I saw some of my fellow commissioners nodding. We are all sincerely committed to that. Thank you for your attention to an overly long response.
Thank you, Commissioner Fleischman. I think there's probably one more question that I'm seeing that hasn't already been answered through some of these different responses. So what are the criteria the commission will use to make their final decision? Commissioner Chisholm.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. There are 13 of us on the commission, and we are, I should tell you that from my experience, this has been one of the most thoughtful groups of people I've ever had a chance to be part of. This is a group of people that represent neighborhoods across the city, communities throughout the city, relative newcomers to the city, and folks who've been working on city challenges for decades. So we each bring to it our own relationships and experiences and hopefully wisdom. And I think it's fair to say that we all probably bring a different balance of criteria to the decisions. But that's why there's 13 of us, so that we can weigh it and balance it and wrestle with it all. For me personally, the most important thing is equity and representation. We haven't talked about it much in this hearing today, but there's a district that all three maps share, which is everybody east of 205 is in one district. And you know, that's an area of Portland that has been historically underrepresented and underserviced. And I think it's fair to say that alleviating that historical harm is something probably unanimously shared by the 13 commissioners. And so, but beyond that, you know, we're all going to wrestle with it and we're all going to mess with it. I think I'll echo those who said, encourage you to try out the mapping tool, wrestle with it yourself. It's hard. You know, the place that we call the Southeast, if you want to bound it by the river and 205, I-84 in Clackamas County, that's 182,000 people, which is to say it's over, it's too big by 19,000 people. And the areas west of the Willamette River are 141,000 people, which is to say it's short by 22,000 people. And so figuring out how to sort of build communities for districts that make sense to everyone is a real tough challenge. But for me, there might be, at one point I just, on a Saturday night with a cocktail, I made a map of 32 districts in Portland. That's pretty interesting. I don't recommend it. But you actually get these very tight, narrow clusters of community when you do that. 4 districts is a very, it's a very gross exercise in the sense that it's very rough. It's very, there's not a lot of fine detail to be had in 4 districts. A lot of people, 163,000 people will be each of the 4 districts. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Siegel.
Thanks. I'll try to keep it short. It's the question itself was pretty clear. What criteria will we be using in moving forward? That was the question. We're going to be using the criteria that was approved by the voters. We've said that very early on, and we're saying it. That's the story, folks. We'll be using these criteria, the voter-approved criteria, as the lenses, you know, through which we'll be looking at, analyzing, and discussing the comments we got through the public hearings we've had to date and the public hearings we have yet to have, and also looking at the communications that have been and will be provided to the commission through staff. So once again, keep those cards and letters coming. Come to the hearings, submit communications, draw a map, and again, be constructive in your comments. You'll have much better sway in the outcome that we are committed to delivering as a commission. That's it.
Thank you. Commissioner Hanson.
Well, I just want to thank Commissioner Siegel for saying exactly what I was going to say to underscore Commissioner Chisholm's point, which is at the core of all of this is the district criteria that all of you as voters approved last November. That is absolutely our North Star and what we are committed to adhering to. And I also just wanted to say this whole process is much more of an art than a science. There is no one perfect map. One of my fellow commissioners said at a different hearing that if there were a perfect map, it's likely that this group would have found it. But we are taking so very seriously each and every piece of feedback that we have gotten. And one of the things that has also continued to strike me throughout these hearings is the immense passion and conviction and like deep feeling that a lot of people have. We've had folks who have given feedback that says or along the lines of like, I can't tell you why, but it's just this feeling that I have, this like intuitive feeling of who I feel connected to. And that is just as valuable feedback as the folks who say, here is the map that I went into district and put together. We are really valuing all of it. Hearing your conviction and your passion and how much this matters to you. And we'll be doing our absolute best to do justice by all of you. So thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. I believe that is the last of the kind of major questions that people have posed for you to answer. It feels like a really good time to move the agenda towards wrapping up and kind of final comments and reflections about what you have heard today. Does that feel right to everybody? I'm seeing some head nods. If anyone has any serious concern with that, okay. All right, well, then we're going to close down that kind of question and answer part of it. Thanks to everyone who participated in that. And now I'd like to turn it over to any commissioners who'd like to offer some final thoughts. I'm looking for hands to be raised so I can call on you. Final thoughts, anybody? I know you have them. I've heard beautiful words out of all of your mouths before. Thank you so much. You are lining up. I knew I could count on you. We'll start with Commissioner Chisholm. You are muted, Commissioner.
Using a phone and a computer simultaneously. I'll start by thanking everyone for participating in this hearing. I know it is a glorious Friday afternoon in Portland, Oregon, and want to encourage you all to get outside as much as possible. But thank you for spending some of it inside here with us. There was a question somewhere in, I think, the Q&A that said, you know, aren't we going to sound these three maps? You want more comment? Yes, we would like more commentary. If you have, like Terry Harris, another map you want to share with us, please do so. We do have to, in the end, pick one map. Some people describe these three maps as finalists. I think they're more like semi-finalists or early nominees or drafts. The next step here will be to consolidate all this feedback and in the end, hopefully, at least 9 out of 13, and hopefully all 13 out of 13 of us will agree on a single map by the end of August. But yes, all your feedback in every form is absolutely welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Laurenti.
Yes, I also just want to thank everyone for taking time out of their days to be here. This districting process does not happen without all of you, and you know, this is our 7th of 9 public hearings, so there are still more voices to be heard in this process. And the final map that we as a commission will vote on will be bound by the criteria that voters approved, informed by the data available to us, and guided by the voices of community through the layers of public input that we've engaged in to this date. As multiple commissioners and folks in the public have acknowledged, this is extremely hard work to try to balance all these things. And we appreciate everyone being here to uplift the perspective of you and your community in driving that process. Because like I said, this doesn't happen without all of you. So appreciate everyone's input, and hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. It looks like it might be the last of our closing remarks. Giving everyone my final second. Okay. Well, thanks again to everybody who came to the hearing today to testify, to ask questions, to just participate in this process. We really appreciate it. Also, thank you to our interpreters who provide an invaluable service. Thank you to the staff who help coordinate all of these hearings. And of course, thank you to the commissioners for spending your time in community. And I think that means I am
And
going
thank you
to.
too,
Oh,
Jamie. We do appreciate you as well. Thank you.
thank you, Commissioner Judd. I appreciate that. I think you and I are supposed to start a podcast together. That's what I heard. Okay. All right, everybody. On that note, we are officially adjourned. Have a great day.